Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about astrology and homelessness. I was kind of inspired to write this due to the fact I've been homeless on a couple of occasions, and I'm going to elaborate and expound on that astrologically later on in this video as to why perhaps this happened to me. Now, anyway, well, first, some things to look at, basic things to look at as far as possible homelessness. Now, as far as transits go, well, the first thing that comes to mind is if you get a Pluto transiting your natal fourth house, this is a time where you might have a greater probability of this happening than average. Now, as to where Saturn can restrict, Pluto can just flat out destroy and obliterate, and it could do so to your home life. I know somebody that has her Pluto right now in her progress chart in the fourth house, and she's had like perpetual and chronic homelessness. But anyway, and also another thing to look at is if Saturn transits your fourth house. That's what happened to me when I became homeless in 2006. I'll get to that a little bit later. But transit Saturn in the fourth house could add despondency and sadness to a home life, and it could give restrictions and limitations, and could be connected with homelessness. It certainly doesn't exclude homelessness, because you're talking about restrictions possibly and limitations in your home life when this happens. Now, also, Uranus transiting the fourth house can cause a very erratic and sporadic type of home life, and that is not excluding that certainly doesn't exclude the possibility of homelessness when this happens. So, and some other things, to look at too. You can look at transiting, Saturn even making an adverse aspect to your natal moon, because the moon is associated with the home and the family life. I'm going to get into some other things later on, but I want to, as far as what could possibly cause homelessness, but I'm going to talk a little bit about my own experience and when I had this Saturn transit in my fourth house. I thought it was very interesting. In 2006, I believe it was July 6, 2006, when this happened. That began about a 4-year period in which I was homeless. And when this happened, of course, okay, Saturn was transiting my fourth house, and was interesting too about this, Mercury was in retrograde motion in Leo at a very early degree, and it was moving. It was on its way out of my fourth house and into my third house of short journeys. Mercury is about not just about communications, as many of you know, it could be connected with short journeys and travels. And it's moving. It was moving in retro out of my first house. And a friend of mine who has his sun either 0 to 1 degree Leo, depending on birth time, which I do not know. His sun is 0 to 1 degree Leo, and he was the person that actually helped me move. So it's very interesting how that panned out. And Saturn, it could be a doozy in terms of possible homelessness for somebody. And the thing about it too is, it's also important to look at, if you have any of the transits I mentioned before, like placements in a progress chart, you could have something similar happen, or something homelessness could happen if you have progressions, like say in your chart where you have Pluto, say even Pluto or Uranus or even Neptune in the fourth. Neptune transiting the fourth house can sometimes indicate some kind of flooding or inundated conditions where one might have to leave the home in some cases. And Neptune also, keep in mind, is associated with gases, or chemicals, and it could even be something like a radon chemical or something which might make somebody have to leave their home and cause some crisis in their home life. Now, the thing too is, progressions can last. Obviously, the difference when you have progressions in your chart, they could last longer, of course, they're generally longer than transits are. That is the main disparity or difference between a transit and say a progression. you look at, like, say, if Saturn is transiting the one of your houses, that you're looking at maybe 2 to 2.5 years on average, depending on house size. Where if you have Saturn, I mean, in a progressed chart, that might be there on average close to 30 years. So, I mean, when you have, I mean, really what I'm saying is if you have like a planet, like say it's a Saturn, Pluto, Neptune, even Uranus, and it's in your fourth house in your progressed chart, sometimes this could indicate some kind of difficulties in the home life for a very prolonged and protracted period. And also, I think afflicted Cancer energy, because Cancer rules is associated with the home and family. If you have afflicted Cancer energy, this could also be an indicator of perhaps having difficulties and upheavals in your home life. I have my Cancer stellium making a square to my Chiron in the 12th house of limitations and restrictions. And of course, Chiron is associated with wounds. Now, adverse aspects to your natal moon can also sometimes figure prominently in perhaps a negative home situation. Now, I mean, if you get like an adverse aspect, say from Saturn to your natal moon, this could cause sadness and despondency perhaps in your home life. And it could, I mean, it could, sometimes this can cause difficulties. And Pluto is about destruction. If you have, say, a transit from Pluto making an adverse aspect to your natal moon, this could cause some upheaval and strong difficulty in your home life as well. And it could even be situations where, I mean, where you feel you don't have that power or control over your home and family situation, which of course could result in a homelessness type predicament. So anyway, it's also, I mean, I can give you a good example for somebody through her chart. Someone that was prominent in my life years ago, and she had she's had a lot of difficulties in her living situation. Has been very mobile. I believe has had probably some times where she was homeless and was staying at different friends, acquaintances' homes for limited periods. Now, this person, first I'll tell you, is that she has her ascendant at critical degree, anaretic degree at 29 degrees Cancer, which I see as the full culmination and energy of that sign as well. And she has it afflicted. She has the moon, the chart ruler, making an opposition to her natal ascendant. She also has the moon opposition Saturn in her natal chart, and Saturn and her moon are both in the signs of their detriment. She has Saturn in Cancer, conjunct her ascendant, but it also opposes her moon in Capricorn, and of course it's in its planet sign of detriment as well, along with Saturn in Cancer, and they're making an opposition to each other. And I mean, you're talking about a chart where, I mean, where I could understand where saying that she was peripatetic would be a vast understatement. I mean, she just has, and during her life, has gone from one place to another. And the thing about this is, too, you look at, I mean, Saturn and Cancer right there by itself can sometimes give difficulties in the home and in the family life, and it can show too when you have Saturn opposite your moon that you can have certain difficulties in maybe getting assistance from as far as your family goes. If you're in some crisis, it could show that maybe she sees some, I mean, the family members. The moon represents the mother, of course, and how you perceive your mother. And she has her moon in Capricorn. So right there, just that alone indicates she may have seen her mother as somewhat cold, callous, and undemonstrative. But then when you have Saturn making an opposition to your moon, then you're talking about where you might have very strong restrictions and limitations from maybe getting that help from the mother, perhaps. So I think that could have played. I mean, that really doesn't help matters at all for her. And of course, the moon in Capricorn in the 6th house, what I look at as the house of worry, because the 6th house does correspond with the zodiac sign Virgo. So, and really, she had, I mean, her chart was such where I could really understand why she's had a lot of difficulties in her home life. And she also has Mars in Cancer conjunct her ascendant. Mars in Cancer, of course, can indicate contentious situations with family members. And Mars in Cancer can often be about where one feels this perpetual battle in order to just survive and have their subsistence needs met and have their home life. I have Mars in Cancer, of course, that's in its fault. I have Mars in Cancer in my natal chart. And I have had home difficulties throughout my life, so I think that plays a role in the situation that I've been in. I've been bouncing around from one place to another for a very good time and have had tremendous difficulty finding stability in my home life. Now, anyway, one thing, really, that's basically it. What I wanted to get at as far as astrology and homelessness and indicators in a chart, which could indicate this in natal chart and in transits and progressions. But also another thing to look at in the natal chart, if you have, say, your ruler of the 12th house posited in the 4th house, of course, the 12th house is restrictions, 4th house is home and family. That could be an indicator for having a problematic home situation, which of course doesn't exclude homelessness, or having the ruler of the 4th house in the 12th house of restrictions, the home life in the 12th house. This could sometimes indicate a limited or restricted home life, and of course this, I mean, that doesn't exclude homelessness, of course. So basically, I mean, that's basically it as far as I want to talk about as far as astrology and homelessness goes. Two things, but I want to tell you before I head out. In the next YouTube astrological segment I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to actually start something new. I'm going to at least for October, I'm going to be doing monthly horoscopes for all 12 zodiac signs. I'm going to start out with the Aries October 2017 horoscope forecast, and then I'll do the Taurus one, and then Gemini, etc., etc. Two things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel but do not compel, and secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone, because astrologically speaking, the person is the sum of all their components in their natal chart and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.